The single mom waitress was harassed in front of her son. Then the Mafia Boss appeared. The 9 o'clock whistle at the milepost diner was not a release. It was just a signal to swap one kind of exhaustion for another. The double shift had left my feet feeling like bags of hot cement, and the smell of fried onions and stale coffee clung to my hair like a cheap shroud. This was life in the Cobalt district of Northbridge. You worked, you hurt, and you kept moving. My pay, mostly singles and a few fives crumpled in my apron pocket, felt impossibly light. It would cover the electricity, maybe. It would not touch the mountain of debt Logan left behind. I pushed open the heavy glass door, the little bell above it giving a tired jingle. The parking lot light flickered, casting greasy yellow circles on the cracked asphalt. It was late October, and the wind cutting down the highway had teeth. I shifted Micah on my hip. He was 4 years old, heavy with sleep, his breathing a warm puff against my neck. His small hand was fisted in the collar of my faded blue uniform. He was the only thing in my world that felt solid. I had the stroller collapsed and hooked on my arm, my keys already woven between my fingers. Points out, a woman learns to do this in the Cobalt district. We were halfway to my rust bucket sedan when they stepped out from between a delivery van and a dumpster. 2 of them. I recognized the type before I recognized the faces. They were Rook Crew. Cheap leather jackets that strained across thick shoulders. The predatory slouch of men who only moved to collect or to hurt. Kira Vale, the taller one said. It was not a question. He had a voice like gravel sliding into a drain. Been a while? I froze. My entire body went cold, colder than the wind. I held Micah tighter. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, you do. The second one, shorter and built like a fire hydrant, sneered. He took a drag from a cigarette and dropped it, grinding it out near my foot. Logan Pike. Rings a bell. Right, your deadbeat husband. Ex-husband, I corrected, my voice tight. I have nothing to do with his business. Please, my son is asleep. The kid's asleep, Gravel voice mocked. Stepping closer, I could smell the sour beer on his breath. That's sweet. But Logan's debt ain't asleep, sweetheart, and now it's your debt. I don't have any money, I whispered, taking a step back. My heel hit the stroller's wheel. We know, Fire Hydrant said, his eyes scanning my worn-out sneakers, my patched apron. We know you skim tips. We know you got nothing, but you gotta pay something. A message. He moved first, not toward me, but toward the empty stroller I'd managed to pop open, my hands shaking. He lifted one heavy, scuffed boot and planted it right on the fabric seat where Micah should have been. Get your foot off that, I said, my voice rising, sharp with panic. Micah stirred, burrowing his face into my neck. Mommy. Shh, baby, go back to sleep. It's okay. It's not okay, Gravel voice said, moving to my other side. He had me boxed in. Logan owed Dax Rook $5,000. Interest has been piling up. You're gonna start paying tonight, or we take collateral. His eyes dropped to Micah. A different kind of energy, hot and sharp, shot through me. I held Micah behind me, shielding him with my body, my hand gripping the stroller handle so hard my knuckles burned. You will not touch him. Big words for a waitress. Fire Hydrant laughed, pressing his boot down harder, grinding grit into the cartoon whales on the seat cover. Maybe we should teach you some manners. In front of the kid, so he learns what happens when his mommy doesn't pay her bills. The threat hung in the air, thick and vile. They were enjoying this, the power, my fear. I was trapped. Across the highway, a sound barely registered, the smooth hiss of expensive tires on wet pavement, a silent hydraulic sigh. Then, nothing. Gravel voice paused, turning his head. What the hell? A block of shadow detached itself from the gloom across the street. A car. No. 3 black sedans, gliding to the curb with the silence of sharks. They had no shine, just a deep, light-absorbing black. The back door of the lead car opened. A man stepped out, and he was not a big man. Not in the way the 2 thugs in front of me were big, but the air around him changed. The parking lot suddenly felt small, and the flickering lights seemed to focus only on him. He wore a dark, tailored overcoat that probably cost more than my car. His shoes were polished, and they made no sound as he crossed the street. He moved with an unhurried grace that was more menacing than any sprint. He stopped about 10 feet away. His face was calm, his dark hair touched with silver at the temples. He looked like a restaurateur, a businessman closing a late deal. I knew who he was. Everyone in Northbridge knew, even if they pretended not to. Carlo Ferrazzi. He did not look at the thugs. His gaze was fixed on the stroller, on the boot planted firmly on it. He spoke, and his voice was not loud, but it cut through the wind and the traffic noise. It was quiet, controlled, and laced with something that felt like frozen steel. In front of a child, gravel voice shifted, trying to regain his footing. "This ain't your business, Ferrazzi. This is Rook Crew." Fire hydrant, to his credit, looked suddenly sick. He tried to pull his foot back, but he was frozen. Carlo Ferrazzi took 2 steps forward. He was close now. He still had not looked at me. He looked only at the boot on the stroller. "Get it off," he said. "I was just," Fire hydrant stammered. Carlo moved. It was not a fight. It was physics. His hand shot out, not in a punch, but in a grip. He seized the thug's ankle. He did not lift the boot. He simply applied pressure to the joint. A clean, precise leverage move. There was a wet, sickening pop. The thug screamed, a high, thin sound as his knee buckled the wrong way. He collapsed onto the asphalt, clutching his leg. Gravel voice reached inside his jacket. A shadow detached itself from Carlo's side. A woman, dressed in a dark suit, moved with impossible speed. I hadn't even seen her get out of the car. She was on him, her hand twisting his arm behind his back, a short, ugly pipe clattering from his grasp. She, Noor Halabi, was Ferrazzi's right hand, the one they whispered about even more than him. She scanned the thug, took a cheap knife from his other pocket, and then shoved him toward his friend. "Get him up. Get out." Noor collected the pipe and the knife, walked back to one of the sedans, and dropped them in the trunk. The thud was final. No blood, no chaos, just cold, absolute power. Gravel voice hauled his partner up, the man sobbing and cursing. He looked back at Carlo, his face pale with fury and fear. "Dax Rook won't forget this. The Rook Crew has backing the Urban Standards Authority. They listen to us, you'll all see." Carlo Ferrazzi finally turned. He looked at me. His eyes were dark, and for a second, I could not breathe. He was not looking at me like the thugs had, not like some piece of trash. He was just seeing. He saw the shaking hands, the threadbare uniform, the terror I was trying to hide from my son. I was shivering, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me freezing. He shrugged off his heavy overcoat. The material was impossibly soft, cashmere. Before I could protest, he draped it over my shoulders, pulling the collar up around Micah, tucking us both into the impossible warmth. "He is cold," Carlo said. His voice was softer now. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a simple, heavy-stock business card. "Blue Lark Room, a name, an address." "You work here," he stated, glancing at the milepost sign. "This is not a safe place for you to be leaving so late." "I don't have a choice," I said, my voice cracking. He pressed the card into my hand. His fingers were warm. "Next time. You do? If they come near you again, you call this number. You call me before they have a chance to call anyone else." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "Thank you." The words were stuck in my throat, tangled up with a deep, paralyzing suspicion. Men like Carlo Ferrazzi did not do things for free. There was always a price. He was not a knight. He was a king, and kings did not save pawns without a reason. He seemed to understand my silence. A small, sleepy voice mumbled from the warmth of the coat. "Mommy," Micah whispered, his head popping up. He wasn't scared anymore. He was just curious, looking at the man in the expensive suit. "He smells like cinnamon," Micah whispered, loud enough for all of us to hear. The words hung in the air, so small, so human. It shattered the tension. I looked at Carlo Ferrazzi. A flicker of something crossed his features. Surprise. Maybe something else. He looked at Micah, and his expression softened, just for a fraction of a second. He gave my son a slow, deliberate nod. It was not a greeting. It felt like a promise. Then he looked back at me. The warmth was gone, replaced by that intense, assessing gaze. He saw me, not just the waitress, not just the victim. He saw Kira Vale. He turned without another word and walked back to the sedan. Noor Halabi held the door. The car pulled away from the curb, as silent as it had arrived. I stood alone in the parking lot, clutching my son, drowning in a cashmere coat that smelled of power and, faintly, of cinnamon. The immediate danger was gone, but I had a terrible feeling I had just traded a simple problem for a much more complicated one. The morning after, the heavy cashmere coat was a phantom limb. I had folded it all, $500 of it, or $5,000. What did I know, and left it on the seat of his unlocked car before I'd driven away, my hands shaking too hard to get the key in my own ignition on the first try. Now, in the 6 a.m. daylight of my apartment at Harbor Light Courts, it seemed like a dream. Harbor Light was another of Northbridge's cruel jokes. The only light came from the busted neon sign of the bail bonds office downstairs. My apartment smelled of bleach and my neighbor's curry. I sat at the tiny Formica table, the one good needle I owned flashing under the bare bulb overhead. I was mending the seam on my other uniform. 2 uniforms, rotated until they were thin as gauze. Micah was still asleep, a lump under the quilt in the corner alcove that served as his bedroom. The quiet was heavy, filled with math. There were 2 kinds of debt in my life. The first was Logan's, Logan Pike, my ex-husband, a man who'd smiled like a movie star and had the substance of smoke. He'd evaporated 6 months ago, leaving behind the lease on my rust bucket car and a $5,000 marker with Dax Rook, a debt I hadn't even known existed until the Rook crew showed up the first time. Then there was my debt. The hospital bills from when Micah was born, when he'd come 2 months early and spent 3 weeks in a plastic box, wires taped to his tiny chest. That debt was mine. It felt different, honorable, almost. It was the cost of the best thing in my life. I knotted the thread, my movements precise. I didn't take handouts. I didn't beg. I just worked. I worked doubles at the milepost until my vision blurred. I scoured the classifieds for side work, and I paid what I could, when I could. I was drowning slowly, but I was doing it on my own terms. That morning, at the preschool drop-off, a church basement room that smelled of crayons and peanut butter, Micah's teacher, Miss Alvarez, pulled me aside. "He has an ear." "Kira," she said, her voice warm. Micah was already at the beat-up upright piano, pounding the keys, but unlike the other kids, his pounding had a pattern. "He loves the music station," I said, managing a smile. "No, it's more than that. He has rhythm. Real intuitive rhythm. We were clapping out beats yesterday, and he kept a 3/4 time while the rest of us were on a simple 2/2. He didn't even know he was doing it." She beamed. "He's got a gift." A spike of pure, uncut joy went through my heart. A gift. My son. It lasted for 3 seconds, then the math returned. A gift meant lessons. Lessons meant money. Money meant the electricity bill, or the car payment, or the medical debt. I gave her a tight nod. "That's wonderful. Miss Alvarez, I'll look into it." She knew. She saw the calculation on my face, and her smile faded a little. "Of course. Dear, just wanted you to know." I kissed Micah goodbye, the pride and the failure tasting like ash in my mouth. I was 20 minutes early for my shift at the milepost. My boss, Sal, was standing by the register, chewing on an unlit cigar. He was a decent man, always paid on time, but he looked pale. "Kira," he grunted, jerking his head toward his office. "What's wrong, Sal?" He shut the door, which he never did. "Got a call. Urban Standards Authority. They're coming for a full kitchen inspection this week." I frowned. We just had one 4 months ago. We passed. "This ain't a routine one." He rubbed his face, his jowls shaking. "Heard someone. Called in a complaint." A specific complaint about our evening prep, your shift. Kira. The air in the tiny office went thin. The thug's voice from the parking lot, the Urban Standards Authority, they listened to us. This was not random. This was the squeeze. They couldn't intimidate me in the parking lot, so they were coming for my job. They were going to strip mine my life, piece by piece, until I had nothing left to give but what they wanted. I follow the code, Sal. You know that. I know, he said, looking miserable. Just be perfect. Don't give them an inch. I can't afford a shutdown, kid. Not even for a day. I walked out onto the diner floor, the smell of frying bacon suddenly making me sick. Halfway through the lunch rush, my phone buzzed in my apron, a text from an unknown number. Usually, I'd ignore it. Probably spam. But something made me look. It wasn't text. It was an image. A digital gift certificate. For Micah Vale, from a friend of music. It was for a 6-week introductory percussion class at the Seastone Arts Center. The expensive place, the one over by the marina. My blood ran cold. A friend of music, a man who smelled like cinnamon. My first instinct was fury. I was not a project. My son was not a charity case. I jammed the phone back in my pocket, my fingers itching to hit delete. This was just another chain, heavier than the first. I didn't delete it. I couldn't. Because when I picked Micah up that afternoon, I opened the image. Drums, he whispered, his eyes going wide. He stared at the picture of cartoon bongos on the voucher. For me, mommy drums. That look, that pure, unfiltered hope, it was a hook, and it was set deep. How could I deny him the one thing that made him light up, just because of my own terrified pride? The call came an hour later, a different unknown number. Miss Vale. The voice was female, professional, clipped. It was Noor Halabi. Mr. Ferrazzi requests a meeting, at your convenience. I'm not. It is regarding an employment opportunity. He will be at the Blue Lark room for the next hour. The line clicked dead. I took Micah with me. I had no choice. The Blue Lark room was closed during the day. The heavy oak doors were locked. I knocked, feeling ridiculous. Noor opened it instantly, as if she'd been standing right behind it. She was in the same dark suit. She looked at me, then at Micah, and her expression did not change, but she stepped aside. The club was dark, smelling of lemon oil and expensive whiskey. It was quiet, but the quiet felt different from my apartment. It felt heavy. Carlo Ferrazzi was not at a table. He was in a small, elevated office behind the bar, the windows overlooking the empty stage. He stood when I entered. Miss Vale, thank you for coming. I can't accept the gift certificate, I said, my voice coming out harsher than I intended. Micah hid behind my leg. Carlo did not acknowledge my words. He gestured to his desk. We require supplemental staff for our private events, Friday and Saturday evenings. The pay is double your current wage. We also provide an attendant for staff children in a secure room upstairs. It was perfect. It was a life raft. And I knew. It was a cage. Why are you doing this? We value competent staff, he said, his voice smooth. That's not what I mean. The men last night, the gift certificate, this job. You're trying to buy me. I am trying, he said, his voice dangerously quiet, to solve a problem. I am not your problem. The Rook crew believes you are, which means you are. I shook my head, grabbing Micah's hand. I can't. I won't be indebted to you. I turned and walked out. I made it to the main floor. Miss Vale. Noor Halabi was standing in the shadows by the stage. A word. She said it was not a request. I stopped. He's not buying you, Noor said, her voice flat, emotionless. He's buying the boy peaceful time. Logan Pike put a price on your head. The Rook crew is collecting. The Urban Standards Authority is their muscle. This is not complicated. It is an equation. You are a target. That makes your son a target. I flinched. Carlo, she continued, is offering insulation. He's painting over the target. Take the insulation. Pride doesn't stop a boot from kicking in your door. Pride doesn't keep your son safe when they decide you're not paying fast enough. She was right. The cold, awful, Pragmatic truth hit me right in the chest. My pride versus Micah's safety. It wasn't even a choice. I turned around. I walked back up the stairs, my feet heavy. Carlo was exactly where I left him, looking out at the stage. "I'll take the shifts," I said, my voice hoarse. "But I won't take the gift certificate. I'll pay for his lessons myself. With the money I earn here, and I don't take cash, only a paycheck. For hours I work. That is the deal." He turned. Slowly. He studied my face, a long, unblinking stare. He was weighing me, testing the spine he had just seen me bend. Finally, he nodded. "Once, the deal." And then, the strangest thing happened. The corner of his mouth ticked up. It wasn't a full smile. It was the ghost of one. It pulled at a faint, silvery white scar that cut from the edge of his nostril to his upper lip. It was a scarred smile, a broken smile. It was gentle, but the shadow in his dark eyes didn't move. "Good," he said. I let go of Micah's hand. My own were shaking. Micah, no longer afraid, stepped forward, curious. He walked past me, toward the massive, dark wood desk where Carlo had been working. He put his small hands on the polished wood, and he began to tap. Tap, tap, tap-a-tap, tap, tap, tap-a-tap. A complex, steady rhythm filled the quiet office, the sound of a little boy, safe for the moment, speaking the only language he had. The inspection team from the Urban Standards Authority did not arrive on a Tuesday, as scheduled. They came on a Wednesday at 12:30, the absolute peak of the mileposts' lunch rush. They did not wear uniforms. They wore cheap, off-the-rack suits that pulled too tight in the shoulders. 3 men, led by one with a face like sour milk and a clipboard. "Sal Antoni," the man said, flashing a badge. "Ira Bell, Urban Standards Authority. We're here for a spot inspection." Sal came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, his face already pale. "We just had our quarterly, Ira. We're paid up." "This is not a quarterly. We had a complaint," Bell said. He did not look at Sal. He looked past him, scanning the diner floor, and his eyes landed right on me as I was setting down a plate of fries. "This is your station." "Correct." I froze. "I'm on the floor, sir. We all cover all the tables." "This station," he repeated, walking over to the counter where I kept my coffee carafes and milk pitchers. He ignored the customers. He ran a finger along the stainless steel. "These milk carafes, what's the temperature?" "They're fresh out of the cooler. We swap them every 30 minutes. He pulled a digital thermometer from his pocket and plunged it into the nearest pitcher. He looked at the reading. 145. It's supposed to be 140. This is a clear violation. Who signed this out? "I did," I said, my voice cold. 40 minutes ago. It's the rush." "The code doesn't care about a rush." "Miss Vale," he said, writing on his clipboard. "This is a public health hazard. I'll need to see your dry storage." Sal started to protest, but Bell just held up a hand. "Do you want me to shut you down right now, Sal, or are you going to let me do my job?" I met Sal's eyes. I nodded. "I'll show him." I led the way to the back pantry. The air was thick with the smell of old flour and bleach. As I pushed the door open, my hand, already in my apron pocket, found my phone. My thumb slid across the screen, found the audio recorder app, and pressed the bright red circle. Ira Bell shut the door behind us, leaving us in the dim light of the single buzzing bulb. "Look," he said, his voice dropping. "This is a mess, a real mess. I'm seeing multiple violations out there. This kind of paperwork, it could shut your boss down. A temporary closure, at least a week, maybe 2. I just stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Sal seems like a good guy," Bell continued, leaning against a sack of pinto beans. "He wouldn't want that, and you wouldn't want to be the reason for it." "What do you want?" I said. He smiled. It was a thin, damp smile. "We just need to see that the staff is invested in public health, a lubrication fee. You could call it a sign of goodwill to make this inspection go smoothly. $500, cash. I'll be back tomorrow to check on your compliance. And this all goes away. We'll mark it as a warning." I don't have $500, I whispered. Find it, he said. He pushed off the beans. I'm sure a pretty, resourceful girl like you can figure it out. See you tomorrow. He left. I stood there, my hand in my pocket, clutching the phone that was now hot to the touch. I waited 10 full seconds before I stopped the recording. I showed Sal, and he listened, his face going from pale to a mottled, angry red. He grabbed the diner's rotary phone and dialed the main number for the USA. He asked for Belle's supervisor. Yeah, this is Sal Antoni, Milepost Diner. I want to file a complaint. One of your inspectors, Ira Bell, just solicited a bribe from my waitress. He put the phone on the counter on speaker. A cool, smooth voice came through the line. Mr. Antoni, this is Director Prentice. That is a very serious, career-ending accusation. I'm serious. I've got a recording of it. The voice on the other end did not pause. There was no surprise, no outrage, just a cold, silky threat, a recording, an illegal, unverified recording. Mr. Antoni, if you or your staff attempt to circulate that audio, I will personally expedite a full-scope audit of your establishment, not just health code. I will check your payroll for the last 5 years. I will check your fire suppression systems. I will check your zoning permits. I will find something, and I will revoke your license by Friday. Are we clear? Sal's hand was shaking. He slowly, quietly, placed the receiver back in its cradle. He looked at me, his eyes full of defeat. He's got us. Kira, he's right. They'll kill me, kid. I can't protect you from this. That night, the blue Lark Room felt like a different planet. My first shift, the uniform was crisp black cotton. The air was cool and smelled of expensive perfume and old wood. I was serving champagne to a private booth. Carlo Ferrazzi was in it. He was nursing a small glass of water, speaking to a local politician, a man I recognized from campaign posters. Their voices were low. I was trained to be invisible, but I could not help but overhear. The new community kitchen project is the priority, Carlo was saying. His voice was not the voice from the parking lot. It was the smooth, persuasive voice of a CEO. It's a corporate social responsibility initiative, a clean partnership. The politician murmured something about zoning. Zoning will be handled, Carlo said. We just need the final coordination. The Integrity Council will oversee the grant distribution. It's all above board. The Integrity Council. The name sounded like armor. It was a world of clean money, of powerful councils and official grants, a world that made Ira Bell's $500 shakedown feel pathetic and dirty. The next day was my day off. I took Micah to the playground on 8th Street. It was a rare, clear afternoon, the sunlight cutting sharp shadows. He was on the swings, laughing, his legs kicking high. Higher, mommy, higher. I was happy. For a full, uninterrupted 10 minutes, I was just a mom in a park. I turned to the stroller to get his juice box, and I saw it. It was stuck to the faded blue canopy, right above where his head rested, a glossy, black vinyl sticker, cut in the shape of a chess piece. A rook. My blood turned to ice water. I looked around, scanning the park, the other moms, the joggers, the old men on the benches. Who had been here? They hadn't touched me. They hadn't touched Micah. They had just been close enough to touch his stroller, to leave a mark. It was not a threat of violence. It was a statement of access. We can get this close, anytime we want. I ripped the sticker off, my nails tearing. I grabbed Micah from the swing, strapped him into the stroller so fast he yelped, and I ran the 6 blocks home. I sat in my apartment, the black sticker on the table, my body vibrating. I took out the business card, Blue Lark Room. I called the number. I need to speak to Noor Halabi. She was at my door in 20 minutes. She didn't knock. She texted, I am outside. She looked at the sticker on my table, her face hardening. The park on 8th. How did you know? It's on their usual route. They're getting sloppy or confident. She held out her hand. In it was a small black fob, no different from a car remote. This is not a phone. It is a beacon. It has one button. You press it for 2 seconds, and I will know where you are. My team will be there in under 3 minutes. I looked at the small piece of plastic. And what does this cost me? It costs you being alive, Nora said flatly. She placed it on the table next to the sticker. This is freedom, she said, tapping the sticker. And this, tapping the fob, is safety. You work for us now. You get one, you lose the other. She left. I picked up the fob. It was heavy. I clipped it to my keychain, right next to my own key and the little photo of Micah. I couldn't sleep. I had the recording, I had the sticker, I had Prentice's threat. It was not enough. I sat at my laptop, my mind racing. I was a waitress. I knew how to read people. I knew how to find information. I searched Ira Bell. Nothing. Dax Rook, mugshots and noise. Then I searched the name of the bar the thugs had mentioned. The Tin Crown. It was a known Rook crew hangout. I scanned public social media, looking for check-ins. I found it. A public Instagram profile. A woman who had tagged herself at the Tin Crown 2 weeks ago. I scrolled through her photos, and there, 4 pictures in, was a blurry group shot. In the back, sitting at a VIP table, was Dax Rook, his arm slung around another man, a man in a cheap suit, laughing, holding a beer. Ira Bell. It wasn't a shakedown. It was a partnership. The Urban Standards Authority was the Rook crew's legal muscle. I went to the Blue Lark the next night, before my shift. I asked for Carlo. I laid it all out on his polished desk in the upstairs office, the phone with the recording, the black sticker, the laptop, open to the Instagram photo. I'm trapped, I said, my voice shaking with a cold fury. I can't go to the city. Prentice will shut Sal down and ruin me. I can't go to the police. They'll say it's circumstantial. What do I do? Carlo was quiet for a long time. He stared at the photo of Bell and Rook. This man, Bell, he said finally, his voice soft. He lives on Kestrel Street. He has 2 daughters. They attend St. Mary's. I felt a chill. What no? I don't want to know that. Nor can pay him a visit, Carlo continued, as if I hadn't spoken. We can convince him to retire. We can find leverage on Prentice. We can make Dax Rook disappear. This is how I fix things. This is how I keep my people safe. I'm not your people, I snapped. And no, I won't do that. That's just more shadows, more violence. That just makes me... I want to expose them. I want it on the record. I want them stopped, not just moved aside. He looked at me, and his expression was something I could not read. It was not anger. It was surprise, maybe respect. He nodded slowly. Then he pressed a button on his desk intercom. Maris, please come in. A woman entered. She wore a charcoal gray suit that cost more than my car, and her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She carried a leather satchel and radiated an intelligence that was as sharp and dangerous as Noor's physical presence. Maris Quell, our counsel. Carlo said, Miss, Vale has a unique legal problem. She wishes to pursue a public, non-violent solution. Maris Quell looked at me. I explained everything, my voice gaining strength, the bribe, the recording, Prentice, the photo. She listened without a single flicker of emotion. When I finished, she nodded. You are correct. The police will not touch the USA. Prentice is too insulated, but you are not out of options. She opened her satchel. There is an independent body, the Metropolitan Ethics Commission. They have no enforcement power, but they have subpoena power over other city agencies if a complaint is verified. More importantly, they have an anonymous whistleblower channel. We can package this, the recording, the photo, your testimony, transcribed with no name. We submit it. It forces their hand. It starts a fire, but they don't know who lit it. I let out a breath I had been holding for days. Anonymity, a commission, a path. Micah, who had been sitting in the corner with a coloring book Noor had given him, got up. He walked over to the small side table where Maris had placed her satchel. He put his small hands on the dark wood, and he began to tap, 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 a fast, anxious, but perfectly steady rhythm. Carlo watched him, and the faint, scarred smile returned. A steady rhythm, he said, almost to himself. That's how you stay alive in the chaos. You hold the beat, even when the song is falling apart. I looked from Carlo to my son. He saw it, too. He did not just see a target, he saw the music. Working at the Blue Lark Room was like stepping into a different version of Northbridge, one that operated on a different frequency. The air was cleaner, the light was dimmer, and the currency was silence. At the milepost, the job was about speed and volume. Here, it was about discretion. I learned the new rules quickly. My uniform was a tailored black shirt and black pants, simple and anonymous. My job was to serve the high-end bourbon, the vintage wines, and the late-night small plates for the musicians and the guests in the main seating area. Noor, in her ruthlessly efficient way, had laid out the floor plan like a military map. "You cover these 12 tables and the bar," she'd said, drawing a line on a diagram. "You do not go to the alcove booths. Tables 7 through 9 are reserved. Mr. Ferrazzi's personal staff will handle them." Those were the transaction tables. I understood without asking. My job was to be part of the legitimate scenery, the public-facing elegance that made the Blue Lark Room the city's premier jazz club and not just a gangster's hideout. Carlo Ferrazzi rarely spoke to me during shifts. He was a presence, usually in his glass-walled office overlooking the stage, or sometimes standing at the dark end of the bar. He did not touch me, not a hand on the small of my back to pass in a narrow hallway, not a casual brush of fingers. It was a profound absence of contact that, strangely, made me feel safer than I had in years. He was, however, always watching. He managed the space around me without me ever realizing it. I was never cornered. If a customer at the bar, slick with whiskey and confidence, started to lean in too close, or held my hand just a fraction of a second too long when I gave him his change, Noor would suddenly appear at my elbow. "Kira, we're running low on Malbec in the cellar." Or a busboy would materialize, needing me to sign a form. I was always being pulled away, always kept in the light, always given an escape route I did not have to create myself. He was protecting me, but with the invisible strings of a master puppeteer. It was a Tuesday, nearly 2 weeks after I'd started. The club was slow, the rain outside turning the city into a watercolor of blurred neon. The house band was on stage, the saxophone player a genius, his music a raw, smoky ache that filled the room. "We're going to slow it down." The piano player murmured into the mic. "This is an old standard, a house favorite. It's called Harbor in a Storm." The music began, a sparse, haunting melody. A slow trumpet solo cut through the quiet. I was at the service station, polishing a row of champagne flutes, lost in the sound. It was the sound of my life, a quiet panic, a search for a safe place. I felt a gaze on me, heavy as a physical touch. I looked up. Across the room, at the far end of the bar, Carlo stood. He was leaning against the polished mahogany, a simple glass of water in his hand. He was not looking at the stage. He was looking directly at me. Our eyes met, and the entire club, the music, the clinking glasses, the distant murmur of conversation seemed to fade away, muffled by a sudden, intense silence. The trumpet hit a long, high note, a note of pure longing that hung in the air, unresolved. That was what his look felt like, a held note. It was not desire, not in the cheap way I'd seen from men at the milepost. It was not ownership. It was something far more dangerous. It was recognition in his eyes. I saw a darkness that mirrored my own, and I knew, in that suspended second, that he saw the steel in me, the part of me that would not break, the part that was just as much a survivor as he was. The note finally fell, and the piano took over. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, and then turned his attention back to the stage. I had to grip the bar to steady my hands. The bubble of manufactured safety burst the next evening. I arrived for my shift, parking in the protected employee lot. Noor met me at the kitchen entrance, her face grim. "You're not using this door tonight. Follow me." "What's wrong?" She didn't answer, just led me through the maze of the main kitchen. up a service elevator and out into a hallway I didn't recognize. This is the secure route, from the parking garage to the staff room. It bypasses the main floor. Memorize it. Noor, what happened? A delivery was made, she said, her voice tight, to the front door. Later. I saw it through the window of Carlo's office, and he was on the phone, his back to me. Down on the street, propped against the heavy oak doors of the Blue Lark, was a funeral wreath. It was a massive, hideous circle of waxy white carnations. A black ribbon was draped across it, and on the ribbon, in glittering gold letters, was a message. For the career of a brave mother. They knew where I worked. They were not just threatening me. They were threatening him. They were telling him I was tainted, that I brought their war to his doorstep. Carlo finished his call, and he was not angry. His face was a mask of cold, terrifying calm. He pressed the intercom. Noor, front door. Have it removed. Send the bill to Dax Rook and add a sanitation fee. He turned to me. They are clumsy. This is good. It means they're worried. They're threatening you because of me, I whispered, my stomach twisting. They are not threatening me, he said, his voice flat. They are reminding me that I have something to lose. They are mistaken. I am reminding them that they do, too. He made one more call. It was short, his voice quiet. The board has changed. Move the pieces. That was all. Move the pieces. That night, my protection became visible. When my shift ended, I was not allowed to walk to my car. A security guard, a man built like a refrigerator, escorted me. When I got home, the usual burnout streetlight in front of Harbor Light Courts had been replaced. It was now a blazing white LED that illuminated the entire block. The next day, when I picked Micah up from preschool, his teacher told me Mags, the sitter from the Blue Lark, had picked him up for lunch and brought him back. She said you'd arranged a play date. I saw the web. It was silent, intricate, and woven with Ferrazzi steel. They were moving around me and my son, anticipating threats, changing routes, controlling the environment. It was like being at the center of a Swiss watch, protected, but also trapped by the complex perfection of the machinery. I found him at the club late that night, long after the last customer had left. He was in his office, the lights low, looking down at the Oriole River. You're tracking my son. I said, it was not an accusation, just a fact. He turned from the window. I'm keeping him safe. There's a difference. Not anymore, he said. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. Sit, Kira. I sat, the silence stretched, filled by the distant sound of the cleaning crew downstairs. I grew up in the Salix swamps, he said, his voice quiet, losing its hard, corporate edge. Over by the old dockyards, my mother ran a waterfront bar, a terrible place. I learned to read a room long before I learned to read a book. I knew which drunk was going to break a bottle by the way his shoulders tensed. I knew which sailor was cheating at cards by the way his eyes flickered. That's a different kind of education. I watched him, seeing the shadow of that boy in the man. My mother was a night nurse, I said, my voice matching his. At Northbridge General, worked the graveyard shift in the emergency room. She taught me how to stand tall when you're scared, how to look a man in the eye when he's yelling, so he knows you're not prey. She said fear is just a message. It doesn't mean stop. It means pay attention. He nodded, a small, slow movement. Stand tall when scared. He looked at me, and the space between us was no longer an office. It was the space between two survivors. My mother taught me to see the threat. Yours taught you to face it. We were talking about our mothers, but we were talking about each other. The file you submitted to the Ethics Commissioner, he said, shifting the topic, the moment of connection passing. It's stalled. Prentice has friends. They're trying to bury it. So what's next? They think they are fighting you, the waitress, he said. They are about to find out they are fighting me, but I need your help. This cannot be solved my way, not this time. You've made that clear, so we will do it your way. But I am missing a piece. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk. "I need to ask you for a favor. Kira, a legal one, something only you can do." My heart hammered. This was it, the price, the hook. "What is it?" "I need you to give me a reason, a perfectly legal, documented reason to look into the Rook Crew's business. I need you to be the one to open the door, so that when I walk through it, I am not a criminal. I am a concerned citizen." I thought of Micah. I thought of the wreath. I thought of the sticker on his stroller. I was done being pushed. "Yes," I said. "Okay." He started to nod, but I held up my hand, stopping him. "On 2 conditions. 2, and they are not negotiable." His eyes narrowed, but he waited. "First," I said, my voice clear and cold, "no one touches my son. He's not a piece on your board. He's out. He's invisible. He's protected completely, or the deal is off." "That is not a condition," Carlo said softly. "That is a fact. It was a fact the moment I saw that sticker. Second, I took a breath. No one dies. I will not have a man's death on my conscience. No matter how much he deserves it, I won't do it your way. We expose them. We don't eliminate them. No one dies for me." He stared at me for a long, heavy moment. This man, who had solved every problem in his life with shadows and leverage and, I had no doubt, violence. I was asking him to fight with one hand tied behind his back. A slow, scarred smile touched his mouth. "No one touches your son," he confirmed, "and no one dies." The submission to the Metropolitan Ethics Commission was a sterile, digital whisper. Maris Quell packaged it the audio file of Ira Bell soliciting a bribe, the high-resolution Instagram photo linking him to Dax Rook, and a 3-page, unsigned transcript of my testimony. It was filed electronically, assigned a case number W246, and I was given an anonymous, encrypted login to track its status. For one night, I felt a flicker of control. That flicker was extinguished by 8 o'clock the next morning. I arrived at the milepost for my shift. Coffee in hand, the parking lot was empty. There were chains on the glass doors, and a bright orange sticker from the Urban Standards Authority was plastered across the glass. "Closed pending audit. Violations of wage and tip distribution." My stomach hollowed out. Not the health code. Wages. My phone rang. It was Sal. His voice thick and broken. "Kira, they shut me down. They froze my accounts. They're claiming I'm skimming tips from staff. Kira, they said they have proof." Before I could even process what that meant, my phone buzzed with a text from another waitress. "Kira, what the hell is this?" It was a link to a local Northbridge gossip blog. I clicked it. The video was grainy, shot from a high angle, just like the real milepost security feed. It showed me, unmistakably me, at the counter during a busy lunch shift. I was taking a check and a credit card from a customer. I smiled, said something, and when I turned, the footage clearly showed me palming the cash tip from the tray and sliding it directly into my apron pocket before running the card. It was a lie. It was a complete fabrication. But it was me, my face, my hair, my uniform. A synthesized, robotic version of my voice had been laid over the footage, patched together to sound like I was muttering. He'll never even miss it. They hadn't just shut down my job. They had destroyed my name. They had painted me as a thief. I was in Carlo's office an hour later, the video playing on a large monitor. Maris Quell and Noor stood nearby. I felt sick, violated. That is not me. I mean, it is. But I didn't do that. I would never... The voice. It's wrong. Maris Quell, calm as ever, peered at the screen. It's a deep fake, a decent one. But they were in a hurry. She paused the video and zoomed in on the bottom right corner, a faint, barely visible watermark, like a ghost on the image, a stylized, 3-pointed crown. "The tin crown," Carlo said. His voice was a low vibration, the sound of a gathering storm. "Precisely." Maris confirmed. They built the fake using the bar's server, and they were too lazy to scrub the file. They routed it through their public-facing IP. It's sloppy, and the audio. She clicked another link. It was a TikTok video, posted 8 months prior. A customer at the milepost had filmed their child telling me a long, complicated knock-knock joke. I was laughing, my head thrown back. At the end, I'd said, "That's hilarious, he'll never even miss it." They had lifted my voice from a public video, cut it apart, and fed it to a machine. I collapsed into the leather chair opposite Carlo's desk. It was over. This was a checkmate I couldn't escape. "It doesn't matter if it's fake," I whispered. "It's out there. Sal is ruined. I'm finished. I can't even get a job at a gas station now." I looked at Carlo, my eyes burning. "I'm done. I told you I wanted to expose them. But this, I can't fight this. I'm taking Micah, and I'm leaving Northbridge tonight." Carlo moved, faster than I'd ever seen him. He came around the desk and crouched in front of my chair, forcing me to look at him. His hands were clenched at his sides, not touching me, but his proximity was a physical weight. "Kira, listen to me." His voice was raw, urgent. This was not the smooth CEO or the cold-blooded boss. This was the man from the Salix swamps. This is not a defeat. This is a declaration. They are sloppy. They are terrified of that file you sent. This is panic. They are showing us their entire hand. He leaned closer. "If you run, you will be running for the rest of your life. They will mark you. They will find you. And I will not be there to stop it." He paused, and his voice dropped. "Do not pull back. Not now. We are playing the long game. Stay in it with me." It was the first time he had ever asked me for anything. Noor spoke from the doorway, her voice cutting through the tension. "They showed us the location. The Tin Crown. The deepfake is new, which means the original footage, the real video of you taking that customer's payment, must still exist. They would need the source file to build the fake. If they were sloppy enough to leave a watermark," Maris added, "they were sloppy enough to leave the original on the same drive. They'd assume no one would ever look." "So we send the police?" I asked, my voice thin. "The police cannot get a warrant for a server in a private business based on a watermark and our suspicion," Maris said flatly. "We need the file, or at least definitive proof of its existence and location." "We need to get inside their server room," Carlo said, his eyes still locked on mine. Noor stepped forward. "The Tin Crown has a high turnover. They just posted a new job listing. Waitress, cash in hand, no questions asked." A cold, terrible silence filled the room. All three of them were looking at me. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Absolutely not. I am not walking into Dax Rook's bar." "You are the only one who can," Noor said. "They are looking for Kira Vale, the whistleblower, the thief. They are not looking for Anna Riley." A girl from upstate with 2 years of bar experience and a fake reference. She slid a driver's license across the desk. It had my face, but a different name, a different life. "The manager is a man named Rafe Martone," Noor continued. "All business. He runs the bar, but he's also their tech guy. The server, a network-attached storage drive. Probably black. About this big is in his office. You do not need to touch it. You do not need to steal it. You just need to get in that office, confirm you see it, and press a single button on your phone. It will tag the location. We will handle the rest, legally." "Who is this Martone?" I asked, my skin crawling. Maris pulled up a photo. Martone, overweight and smiling, shaking hands with Director Prentice at a golf tournament. "Martone is their insider," she said. "He's listed as a consultant for the Urban Standards Authority. He's the one who feeds the Rook crew their targets. He's the one who gave the order to shut Sal down." I looked from the photo of Martone to the fake ID. I thought of Sal's ruined diner. I thought of the sticker on Micah's stroller. That afternoon, I dropped Micah at the safe house, a corporate apartment Carlo kept 2 towns over. Mags, the Scottish sitter, was there. She was building a magnificent blanket fort in the living room. And just as Captain Redbeard raised his sword, Mags was saying in a booming voice, the giant octopus peeked one eye over the railing. And do you know what he wanted? Micah. "Pancakes," Micah shrieked, diving under a pillow. He was safe. He was in a world of pirates and pancakes. I would keep him there. The Tin Crown smelled of stale beer and old plumbing. I was Anna, wearing a cheap, low-cut tank top and too much eyeliner, the fake ID in my back pocket, Rafe Martone looked me up and down, his eyes lingering. "You know how to carry a tray?" he grunted. "I know how to work," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Fine. Don't steal from me, and we'll get along. You start now." For 3 hours, I served watered-down drinks to men who looked like they'd just crawled out from under a rock. I kept my head down. I was invisible. At 9:30, Martone got into a loud argument with the bartender over a bottle of whiskey. He slammed his way out from behind the bar and headed to the bathroom. This was it. His office door was behind the bar, slightly ajar. I glanced at the bartender, who was busy rinsing glasses. I slipped through the door. The office was a mess of invoices and cash boxes, and there, under the desk, just as Noor had described, was a black metal box with a series of blinking green lights, a NAS drive, the archive. I pulled out my phone, opened the simple app Noor had installed, and pressed the single button on the screen. Mark. I turned to leave. Rafe Martone was standing in the doorway, blocking my exit. His greasy smile was gone. My heart stopped. "Funny thing," he said, his voice deceptively casual. He was holding my cheap purse. "I ran the ID you gave me. Anna Riley, it's a good fake. But the name tag," he pointed to the plastic pin on my shirt. "It's a standard issue from the temp agency I use to staff this dump, an agency I own, and we don't have any Anna Riley on our books." He took a step into the room, his eyes dead and cold. "But I do know who you are, Kira Vale." He reached past me and kicked the door shut. The lock clicked with a heavy, final sound. "Dax Rook is going to be very, very happy to see you." He lunged for my arm. I didn't scream. My mother's voice, "Stand tall. Pay attention." My right hand was already in my pocket, my fingers wrapped around the panic fob Noor had given me. As he grabbed my left arm, I pressed the button, holding it down for 2 full, agonizing seconds. He spun me against the wall, his forearm pressing against my throat. "Who are you working for, Ferrazzi? You think he can help you now?" A sound erupted, not from inside, but from the alley outside. A deafening, high-pitched electronic shriek, a fire alarm. Martone's head snapped toward the wall. "What in the hell is that?" From the bar, someone yelled, "Fire! There's smoke in the back." He cursed, his grip loosening for just 1 second. It was all I needed. I drove my knee up, hard, into his groin. He roared, staggering back, his hands dropping. I didn't wait. I ripped the door open and sprinted. The bar was already in chaos. The alarm was blaring. I didn't go for the front door. I went for the kitchen, just as Noor had drilled me. I shoved through the swinging doors, past a terrified cook, and slammed my hand into the panic bar on the rear exit. I burst out into the narrow, dark alley, my lungs burning. The alarm was deafening, mounted on the wall just above the door. A black sedan screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley, its headlights pinning me. The back door flew open. "Carlo?" He was out of the car before it stopped, moving toward me, his hand out. "Kira, get in, now." He half pulled, half threw me into the back seat, tumbling in beside me as he slammed the door. The car lurched forward, tires smoking, before his door was even fully shut. I sat in the dark, suffocating luxury, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I was covered in the grime of the bar, and I could smell the dumpsters from the alley. I was breathing in short, desperate gasps. "Thank you," I choked out. The words felt stupid, small. Carlo was staring straight ahead, his profile carved from stone in the flashing city lights. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. He let me hyperventilate for a full minute as the car raced away from the river. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but rough, as if it had been scraped over gravel. "This," he said, still not looking at me, "is 2 adults partnered. This is not a savior and a debt. We got what we needed." The car did not go to Harbor Light Courts. It crossed the Oriole River, climbing the winding roads of the Heights, a neighborhood I only ever saw from below. The sedan glided into a subterranean garage, and we rode a private elevator in silence. My heart was still a frantic drum against my ribs, the stink of the Tin Crowns alley still in my nose. The elevator doors opened directly into his apartment. It was not an apartment. It was the entire top floor, a penthouse of glass and quiet, dark wood. The rain was not just a sound, it was a moving watercolor painting across floor-to-ceiling windows. The lights of Northbridge breathing far below. The space was immaculate, minimalist and cold, but it was safe. I was still shaking, the residual adrenaline having no place to go. I wrapped my arms around myself, realizing I was covered in grime, standing on a pristine, hand-knotted silk rug. "I'm sorry, I'm filthy," I murmured, backing toward the elevator. "Stop!" His voice was rough. He disappeared for a moment and returned with a heavy throw blanket, wrapping it around my shoulders. He looked at my hands, which were scraped raw from the alley wall. He said nothing, just gestured for me to sit on a low, modern sofa. He went into the kitchen, a dark expanse of marble and steel. I watched him. The man who commanded rooms, who moved pieces on a citywide board, looked utterly lost. He opened a cabinet, closed it. He looked for a pot. He found a mug. He seemed, for the first time, human. He returned a few minutes later with a large, steaming mug. "It is cocoa," he said, his voice awkward. "I do not keep tea." I took the mug. My hands were shaking so badly the ceramic rattled against my teeth. The liquid was hot, dark, and sweet. The warmth hit my stomach and radiated outward, and I finally took a full breath. Carlo sat in the chair opposite me, not too close. He just watched me, letting the silence and the rain fill the space until my breathing slowed down. The adrenaline was ebbing, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a dangerous, humming awareness of him. When I finished the cocoa, I set the mug down on the low table. He was still watching me. He held out one hand, palm up, a simple, open gesture. It was not a command. It was an offer. He waited. I looked at his hand, the hand that had gripped a thug's ankle, the hand that had signed checks to protect my son, the hand that had, moments ago, made me hot chocolate. After a long second, I put my trembling, dirty hand into his. His grip was instantly warm and firm. He did not pull me. He just held my hand. The long-held, agonizing tension that had been my life for months, the debt, the threats, the fear snapped, the gaze that had passed between us at the bar, the night of the saxophone solo, returned. The held note was here, in this room, and it had to resolve. He rose slowly from his chair, bringing me up with him. He did not pull me close. He stood in front of me, still just holding my hand. I was the one who moved. I let go of his hand and lifted my own, the one that was not scraped, and touched the lapel of his suit. The fabric was impossibly fine. "You came," I whispered. "I told you I would," he replied, his voice a low gravel. He covered my hand with his, pressing my palm flat against his chest. I could feel his heart, a slow, steady, powerful beat. So different from my own. He leaned in, slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. I did not. The first kiss was not a kiss. It was a breath. It was the simple, soft press of his mouth against mine. It was hesitant, questioning. It tasted of nothing but the rain and the end of a long, terrified run. It was just warmth and a quiet statement. "You are here. You are safe." He pulled back, just an inch, his eyes searching mine. My fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. Fear of Rafe Martone, fear of Dax Rook, and a new, terrifying fear of this man, of what this meant. I must have flinched, because he respected it instantly. He dropped his hands from mine and took a half step back, creating space, proving he was not a trap. And that was what undid me. The respect, the fact that he let me go. I looked at him, the man who could command a city, but who would not command me. I stepped back into the space I had created, fisted my hand in the front of his shirt, and pulled him down to me. This time there was no hesitation. This time I met him halfway. It was a slow, deep kiss that unraveled everything. It was not frantic. It was not hungry. It was a kiss of profound, staggering relief. His one hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing slowly over my cheekbone, while his other arm wrapped around my back, pulling me against him, holding my weight. I felt the solid, unyielding strength of him. My shoulders, which I had held rigid for years, finally slumped. I sagged against him, my hands gripping his shirt as if he were the only solid ground on earth. He broke the kiss, but only to rest his forehead against mine. We stood there, tangled in the blanket, breathing each other's air. We were both clumsy at this gentleness. Our foreheads bumped, and a small, surprised laugh escaped my throat. "I am still scared," I whispered, the admission torn out of me. He tightened his grip, his hand moving from my back to my hair, holding my head against his shoulder. "I know." His voice was a low murmur against my ear. "But you are not scared in the dark anymore. I will keep you in the light." We stood by the window for a long time, watching the city breathe below us. He held me, just held me, in a long, silent embrace that demanded nothing and offered everything. We did not move to the bedroom. The intimacy was not about that. It was about this, the safety. We whispered, not declarations, but logistics, the safest topics in the world, my work schedule, his meetings, the hours Mags was available. We talked about Micah. It was the most intimate conversation of my life. On the couch, wrapped in the blanket, I finally fell asleep. It was the first dreamless, terror-free sleep I had had in a year. I woke to the smell of eggs. Sunlight was pouring through the massive windows, the storm gone, leaving the city washed clean. Carlo was in the kitchen. He was in simple black trousers and a gray Henley, the sleeves pushed up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. He was making scrambled eggs, badly. He looked over, saw me awake, and that small, scarred smile appeared. "I am not good at this." "You are supposed to stir them less," I said, my voice thick with sleep. He handed me a plate. We ate at the kitchen island in the sunlight. There was no grand discussion, no awkwardness, just two people eating breakfast. "So what is next?" I asked. "Maris is already moving." He said, "The location tag you placed on the NAS drive is a verifiable digital breadcrumb. She is filing an anonymous tip with the Ethics Commission and a civil suit alleging that the Tin Crown is using unlicensed software, citing your tip as proof. It forces them to legally image that drive. They cannot erase it now. You gave her the key." I took a bite of the eggs. They were fine. I looked at him. "Carlo, last night, what we did, you and me, it was—" "Yes," he said, his voice quiet. "This," I said, motioning between us, "is a partnership. What we did at the bar, what we are doing to them, and this, it is not. I am not your employee, and you are not my savior. Not anymore." He held my gaze, his dark eyes serious. "Partners." He agreed, and he put his hand over mine on the marble countertop, a simple, solid confirmation. That afternoon, I met him at the Blue Lark Room. It was daytime, the club empty, silent and strange. Micah was with Mags in the upstairs office. When I walked in, Micah was sitting on the floor. In front of him was a small 3-piece drum kit. It was child-sized, but it was real, red, with a tiny, shining cymbal. Carlo was leaning against the bar, watching. Micah picked up the sticks. He looked at the drums, his eyes wide with a kind of holy reverence. He tapped the snare, tap. He hit the small hi-hat. Then he looked at me, a grin splitting his face. He began to play. Tap, tap, tap-a-tap, tap, tap, tap-a-tap. My breath caught. It was the rhythm from Miss Alvarez's class. It was the beat he'd tapped on Carlo's desk, but I knew the song. He was playing the melody line, the rhythm of the trumpet solo. He was playing Harbor in a Storm. The room filled with the bright, sharp, joyful sound, the entire staff. Noor, Mags, the bartenders, even Maris Quell, who was waiting by the door, stopped. Everyone was smiling. I looked at Carlo. He was not just a shield. He was not just a weapon. He was the man who had seen the music in my son and given him a space to play it. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text. It was the encrypted notification from the Ethics Commission. I opened it. The status of case W246 had been updated. A meeting with the anonymous witness is requested to verify supplemental evidence. Please confirm availability. The next stage had begun. The meeting was not held in an office. It was held in the sub-basement of the Blue Lark, in the main wine cellar, a long, cold room that smelled of damp stone and aging Cabernet. The Ferrazzi Syndicate was not a corporation. It was a council. I was not there, but Carlo told me later, his voice flat and hard, how it had gone down. Maris Quell laid out the evidence, the server logs from the Tin Crown, the confirmed identity of Rafe Martoni as both the bar's manager and a paid consultant for the Urban Standards Authority. Rafe Martoni, a man who, I learned with a sickening jolt, was a lieutenant in the Ferrazzi organization itself, was present. He was the traitor. He had been playing both sides, skimming from Rook and leveraging the USA, all while reporting to Carlo. My investigation had exposed him. He did not deny it. He leaned back in his chair, arrogant. "It's a mess, Carlo. I agree," Martone said, spreading his hands. "The waitress, she dug too deep, but there is a solution, a simple one. Dax Rook is panicked. Prentice at the USA is panicked. They are offering a truce. They will personally quash the wage investigation. They will drop the deepfake. They will back off Sal's diner. And they will forget this whole Ethics Commission file. It all goes away." A heavy-set man named Russo, one of Carlo's senior capos, grunted, "What's the price?" "The girl," Rafe said, his eyes cold. "They want the witness. We give them Kira Vale. We hand her over. It cleans the slate. It's good business. We trade one waitress, one civilian for total peace." Russo nodded. "He's right. Carlo, she's an outsider. She's not blood. This is a clean deal. We cut her loose." The silence in the cellar was absolute. Carlo sat at the head of the long oak table, his fingers steepled. "No," Carlo said. The word dropped into the cold air like a stone. Russo's head snapped up. "What?" "No," Carlo repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "She is under my protection. We do not trade innocent people, ever. The discussion is over." He had broken the code. He had chosen me, an outsider, over a clean, profitable deal. The discontent was immediate, a sour, tangible thing in the air. Russo and the others looked at Martoni, then at Carlo. A line had been drawn. That night, the storm broke. I finished my shift, my nerves humming from the tension I could feel rolling off Carlo all evening. He had been a thundercloud in the corner of the room, dark and silent. My first duty was to pick up Micah. He and Mags had spent the evening in the green room, the soundproof, fully stocked lounge the musicians used between sets. It was the safest place in the building. With reinforced walls and its own dedicated power line, Mags was reading him a story, and he was already half asleep, clutching the small red drumsticks Carlo had given him. He was safe. I kissed his head, and Mags promised to stay with him until I was ready to leave. I went to the employee locker room, changed, and headed for the garage. Nor met me by the service elevator. "Change of plan," she said, her voice clipped. "Your car's offline." "What do you mean, offline?" "I mean, someone just remotely disabled your alarm and hacked your locks. It's a lure. You're riding with me." We moved toward the side exit, the steel door that led to a private alley. Before we took 3 steps, the main lights in the hallway flickered twice and then plunged into absolute suffocating darkness. Thump. The entire building's power grid went dead. There was a beat of stunned silence, then the distant, muffled sound of customers yelling in the main room. A second later, the emergency system kicked in, dim. Blood-red lights illuminated the hallway, casting long, monstrous shadows. "Martone," Nor hissed. "He cut the main power. The green room is fine. It's on the backup circuit. Stay with me. Move." We ran, but in the chaos of the red-lit hallway, 2 panicked busboys burst through a door, colliding with Noor. She went down in a tangle of limbs, shouting my name. I turned back, my hand out. A heavy hand grabbed my arm from a side passage, yanking me off my feet. I was slammed against the wall, the impact knocking the air from my lungs. Rafe Martone. His face was inches from mine, slick with sweat in the red light. "You," he growled, his breath hot and sour. "You ruined everything, my deal with Rook, my setup with the USA, everything." He pinned me, his forearm pressing against my collarbone. "They're trying to erase the server at the Tin Crown right now, but it's not enough. They need the whistleblower file to be invalidated. Give me the witness authentication code, the login for the Ethics Commission. Give it to me now, and I'll let you walk out of here." "I don't know what you're talking about," I gasped, my mind racing, remembering Noor's lessons, the wrist, Kira. Not the face, the wrist. He laughed, a low, ugly sound. "Don't lie to me." He grabbed my right wrist, his fingers digging in like steel bands, trying to crush my hand. "Give me the code." I did not panic. I let my body go limp, and with my free left hand, I formed a rigid blade. I drove the heel of my palm straight down onto the delicate bones of his inner wrist, exactly where he was gripping me. He screamed, a high-pitched sound of shock and pain, and his grip vanished. I didn't hesitate. I shoved him, hard. He staggered back, clutching his arm, his face contorted in disbelief. I scrambled to my feet, rubbing my wrist, my back against the wall. And at the end of the hall, silhouetted against the red light, stood Carlo. He had been coming for me, but he stopped. He saw me on my feet. He saw Martone clutching his arm. He saw that I was shaking, terrified, but standing. "Good," Carlo said, his voice echoing in the narrow space. "You protect yourself." He took a calm step forward. "The rest is mine." The main lights flooded the hallway, bright and blinding. Noor was there, behind Martone, flanked by 2 security men. Russo, the hardline capo, was with them, his face a mask of cold fury. "You cut the power," Russo snarled at Martone. "You put the whole family at risk. For what? To cover your tracks." "He's a fool," Martone spat, looking at Carlo. "He's throwing away a clean slate for a waitress. It's bad business." "Business." Noor stepped forward, holding a small, digital audio recorder. "Let's talk about business. We pulled the first files from the Tin Crown server. Rafe, your private archive. It seems you and Ira Bell were very chatty." She pressed play. Rafe's voice, tinny and clear, filled the hall. "A full-scope audit of his establishment. I will check his payroll. I will revoke his license by Friday." Noor stopped it. "And my favorite." She pressed play again. Rafe's voice. "The deep fake just used the TikTok audio. She's a nobody. Bury her." Russo looked at Martone, his face pale with rage. This was not business. This was betrayal. This was a Ferrazzi lieutenant actively partnered with the USA, using their power against civilians, bringing that heat back to them. "You?" Russo whispered, his voice shaking. "You are the rat." Martone knew it was over. He saw the look in Russo's eyes. This was no longer a negotiation. This was a death sentence. In a last, desperate move, he shoved Russo hard into Noor and the guards. He turned and sprinted down the hall toward the freight elevator. "He's running," Noor shouted, untangling herself. "He's going for the master archive, Yard 17. He can't erase the Tin Crown server remotely, not with Maris's lock on it, but the backup, he can wipe the backup." "Noor," Carlo commanded. "Get Mags and Micah. Take them to the penthouse. Full security detail. Lock it down, now." "On it," she said, turning. "No." Everyone froze. They all looked at me. "No," I said again, my voice clear, though my legs were shaking. "You don't know the archive." "I do. Sal used to send me to Yard 17 for bulk flour and dry goods. The archive is in the old shipping office. I know the building. I know the cabinet he's running to. You'll be blind. I'm going with you." Carlo stared at me, his face unreadable. I could see the calculation, the lifetime of instinct telling him to hide me, to protect me, to lock me in a safe room. I met his gaze. I was not the woman in the parking lot. I was not a victim. I was his partner. He hesitated for only 1 second. He turned to Noor. Get the boy. Take him home. Lock it down. That is your only priority. Noor nodded, a look of profound respect in her eyes as she glanced at me. She was gone. Carlo turned back to me. He held out his hand. Let's go. We ran for the service elevator, the one that led to the garage. The heavy steel doors slid shut, sealing us inside, our reflections staring back at us in the polished metal, the point of no return. Yard 17 was not the clean, modern port. It was the old docklands, a graveyard of rust and forgotten cargo. The wind coming off the Oriole River was not just a breeze. It was a physical, shrieking force that tore at us, smelling of salt and decay. We got out of the sedan. The yard was a maze of black, towering containers. The only light came from high-wattage motion sensors, mounted on poles. As we moved, they snapped on, one by one, throwing harsh, sterile circles of white light on the wet asphalt. Then, as we passed, they plunged back into darkness. It was a chessboard. We were the pieces, moving from square to square. This way, I yelled over the wind, grabbing Carlo's arm. It's not a container, it's the old shipping office. Building C. I used to pick up Sal's bulk orders here. Carlo moved beside me, a dark shape in the flickering, chaotic light. His phone was already at his ear, his voice low and precise, cutting through the howl. This is Carlo Ferrazzi. I am at Yard 17, Section C. My company's remote alarm sensor has just tripped. I am on site, and I see smoke coming from the roof of Building C. It looks like an electrical fire. I need a dispatch immediately. He listened. Yes, the Harbor Safety Patrol. Thank you. He pocketed the phone. The diversion, the HSP are quasi-public. They have primary jurisdiction in the docklands, faster than city fire, faster than the police. They will be here in less than 5 minutes. That was our clock. The lock on the office door was old and stiff. Carlo didn't bother picking it. He put his shoulder to it, and the rotted jamb splintered. The door flew open. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the smell of mildewed paper. In the main room, rows of empty desks sat like ghosts. At the far end, the manager's office. We heard him, the frantic, rhythmic tapping of a keyboard. Carlo kicked the office door. It swung wide. Rafe Martone was there, bathed in the sick, blue-white glow of a laptop screen. He looked like a cornered animal. Sweat plastered his hair to his skull. The black NAS drive, the one from the Tin Crown, was plugged into his laptop, its green lights blinking frantically. He was trying to execute a master erase. "You get out," he screamed, his hands flying over the keys. "You're too late. It's almost gone." Carlo's phone buzzed in his hand, a single text. He read it, and his face was utterly calm. "You are the one who is too late. Rafe." On Martone's laptop screen, the formatting drive progress bar froze at 90%. It flickered, and then a new window, a shield icon, filled the screen. "Access denied. This asset has been placed under civil seizure. Integrity Council Warrant 77B. Martone stared at it, his mouth open. He hammered the escape key. Nothing. "What did you do?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "That," Carlo said, stepping fully into the room, "is Maris Quell. From a laptop 3 miles away. She just executed the civil seizure warrant we had pre-filed with the Integrity Council. The warrant we got the moment you hacked my building's power grid. That drive is now evidence. You cannot access it. You cannot erase it. It is frozen." I saw my opening. While Martone was frozen in disbelief, staring at the screen, I moved. I walked past him, my eyes on the laptop. The file directory was still visible behind the seizure notice. Tin Crown _archive, and beside it, USA _favors. I didn't care about that one. I clicked the archive, a subfolder MP _feed _October _24. And there it was, a single video file. I hit play. The grainy black and white footage filled the screen. It was me, at the Milepost Diner. During the lunch rush, I saw the customer, the one from the deepfake, "Hand me the check folder." I smiled. I turned to the register, and I, clearly, unmistakably, took the cash tip and dropped it into the register's cash drawer before running the credit card. The original, the truth. "I have it," I said, my voice shaking as I pulled the small, silver flash drive Maris had given me from my pocket. I plugged it in. Copy, paste. "You!" Martone roared. He finally understood. He saw the flash drive. He saw his last escape route closing. He lunged, not for me, but for the desk drawer. He ripped it open and pulled out a gun. It was a heavy, snub-nosed revolver. Carlo moved in the same instant. It was not a tackle. It was not a fight. He simply stepped, inserting his body between me and the barrel of the gun. I was completely shielded by his back, my hands still on the laptop as the file transfer bar crawled. "Put it down, Rafe," Carlo said. His voice was not angry. It was soft, almost disappointed. "I'll kill you both," Martone panted, his eyes wild. He leveled the gun at Carlo's chest, his hands shaking violently. "I'll kill you. I'll kill her. I'll burn this whole place down." "No, you will not," Carlo said, his voice a low taunt. "You're not a killer, Rafe. You're a bookkeeper who got greedy. Look at your hand." The barrel of the gun was dancing, a frantic, vibrating circle. "That is not the wind," Carlo said, as the building groaned around us. "That is your fear. You are terrified of the light. You are terrified of what happens when the shadows are gone." This was not his fight to finish. It was mine. I stepped out from behind Carlo. "Kira, get back," Carlo commanded, his arm shooting back to block me. I pushed it aside. I put my hands up, open where Martone could see them. "He's right, Rafe. It's over." "Shut up," he shrieked, swinging the gun toward me. I took a deep breath, and I did the one thing he would never expect. I did not cower. I shouted, my voice clear and strong, cutting through the wind. "My name is Kira Vale. My anonymous witness identification number is W246. I am an active, protected whistleblower with the Metropolitan Ethics Commission. My identity is on the record as of 10 seconds ago. If you pull that trigger, you are not silencing a problem. Rafe, you are committing a federal offense against a protected witness. This is not a back alley murder. This is news. This is daylight." The words hit him like a physical blow. He stared at me, his face collapsing as he understood. Killing me wouldn't bury the story. It would be the story. Whoop, whoop, whoop! The piercing, alternating shriek of sirens, the harbor safety patrol. Red and blue lights swept across the yard, flashing through the dusty windows, painting the room in frantic, strobe-lit panic. Rafe Martone broke. He looked at the gun, at me, at Carlo, and at the flashing lights outside. He dropped his arm, and he ran. He bolted out of the office, back into the maze. "Let him go," Carlo said, grabbing my hand, which was still clutching the flash drive. "They will get him." We walked out of the office. We were not running. We stepped outside just as 2 harbor patrol cruisers skidded to a halt on the wet pavement. Officers piled out. "Freeze harbor patrol, hands in the air." Rafe was scrambling at the edge of the pier, looking for a boat, any escape. He saw the officers, turned, and slipped. The old wooden planks were slick with river spray and rain. His feet went out from under him. He went down, hard, his back slamming against the wood with a wet thud. The revolver flew from his grasp, skittering over the edge of the pier and disappearing into the black, churning water of the Oriole. He did not move, and he was just a man on the ground, groaning. "No shots, no blood, my way." A third car, Carlo's black sedan, slid to a stop. Noor got out, flanked by 2 of Carlo's men, including Russo, the capo. They were not patrol. They were syndicate. The HSP officers were busy, yanking a sobbing Martone to his feet, cuffing him. Noor walked past them, directly to me. She gently took the flash drive from my hand. She then walked over to the cuffed Martone. Carlo's men moved, creating a silent, professional wall, blocking the view of the patrol officers. Russo, the man who had wanted to trade me, looked at Martone, then he looked at Carlo, and he dipped his head, a sign of ultimate, absolute respect. Carlo walked up to the captured man. Martone looked at him, his face streaked with tears and rain. "Boss, Carlo, please, it was just business. Please." I saw Carlo's hands clench at his sides. I saw the shadow of the Salix swamps rise in his eyes, the deep, primal urge to finish this, to deliver the cold justice of his world. I stepped up beside him and quietly put my hand on his forearm. He stopped. The tension in his shoulders went rigid. He looked at me, and my hand on his arm, and he remembered. He let out a long, slow breath. The shadow receded. He had made a promise. He looked at the patrol officer. "He's all yours. Officer, we found him here, trying to destroy his records. He's the one who pulled the alarm." He turned his back on Rafe Martone. He did not take his revenge. He handed him over. Noor was already at the car. "The drive is clean. Maris has the original video. It's being uploaded to the Ethics Commission and the Integrity Council servers right now. The Blue Lark is completely insulated. The case is sealed." We left them there. The flashing lights, the shouting, the end of their world. We got into the sedan. Carlo drove in silence. He did not go to the penthouse. He did not go to my apartment. He drove to the highest point in Northbridge Heights, a scenic overlook that looked down on the entire city. He cut the engine. The yard was a distant, frantic flicker of blue light. The rest of the city was asleep. We sat side by side in the profound quiet. The eastern sky, over the Oriole, began to bleed from black to a deep, bruised purple. The storm was over. The sun was coming up. It was a single, perfect, quiet moment. The deep breath before the final act. The hearing at the Metropolitan Ethics Commission was not a trial. It was an autopsy. It was held in a beige, windowless room in the city annex, but it was broadcast on the local Northbridge cable channel. Maris Quell had arranged that. I sat in the front row, not as a witness, but as a citizen. My anonymous testimony, W246, was now public record, and my name was attached to it. Director Prentice was there, his face a mask of arrogant denial. Ira Bell was beside him, looking like he was about to be physically ill. A lawyer for the commission, a sharp woman with steel gray hair, methodically laid the pieces on the table. First, the audio, Ira Bell's voice, thin and reedy, filled the room, a lubrication fee. You could call it $500, cash. Bell sank lower in his chair. Second, the video. They played the deepfake, the one that had ruined me, the robotic voice. I'll never even miss it. Then, they played the file I had pulled from Martone's laptop, the original. Me, taking the money, smiling, and dropping it directly into Sal's cash register. An audible gasp went through the room. Director Prentice tried to speak. "This is clearly a fabrication by a disgruntled—" "A fabrication, Mr. Prentice," the commission lawyer interrupted, her voice like ice. "Then let us turn to your own records." A spreadsheet filled the monitors. It was the Urban Standards Authority's operating budget, specifically the line item for community outreach and discretionary enforcement. It showed a series of payments, tens of thousands of dollars, made over the last 2 years to a single company, Civic Nexus LLC, a shell corporation, the lawyer explained, which, we have discovered, it has only one director, Mr. Rafe Martone, your consultant. Then she played the audio from the Blue Lark hallway, Rafe's voice, clear as a bell, discussing the deep fake with Ira. The deep fake. Just use the TikTok audio. She's a nobody. Bury her. It was a complete, perfect, inescapable trap. The last piece was for Dax Rook. His lawyer, a slick man in a sharkskin suit, stood up. "My client is a legitimate businessman. He has no connection to Mr. Prentice or Mr. Martone. He's a victim in this. His good name slandered." "Is he—" The commission lawyer slid a final exhibit across the table. It was a close-up photo of the funeral wreath that had been left at the Blue Lark, and next to it, an invoice. "This is the order for the wreath, placed by Civic Nexus LLC, and this She pointed to a high-resolution photo Noor had taken of the ribbon. Is the serial number from the floral wire. A perfect match. The key, meeting the lock. It was all over. Prentice was suspended. Bell was fired. Dax Rook was under federal investigation for racketeering. The link finally made between his crew and a city agency. The next day, the chains came off the milepost diner, Sal, his face haggard but his eyes clear for the first time in weeks, held a small press conference on the sidewalk. I failed my employee, he said, his voice rough. I let myself be intimidated, and I failed to protect her. I am publicly apologizing to Kira Vale. Her job is here for her, and I am giving her full back pay for every day we were closed. I was there, standing at the edge of the crowd. When he finished, I walked up. Thank you, Sal, I said, loud enough for the reporters to hear. I appreciate the apology. I will accept the wages I am legally owed for my scheduled shifts and nothing more. And I quit. I walked away. The Northbridge Beacon's headline the next morning was, Waitress Flips the Power Board. My phone rang all day. Local news, talk shows, they wanted to turn me into a symbol, a working-class hero. I agreed to one short on-camera statement. I stood on the steps of the Annex building, the cameras flashing. My name is Kira Vale. I am not a symbol. I am a mother and a waitress who was targeted. I did what anyone would have done. I recorded the truth. And I reported it. I don't want to be an icon. I just want to live in a city where a person can do their job without being extorted. And I want to get my son into a good music class. I looked at all of them, the reporters and the politicians who were suddenly my best friend. Instead of putting my face on a poster, put your money into the Seastone Arts Center. Fund the music programs for the kids in this city. I walked away from the microphones. Carlo was not there. He'd not been at the hearing. His name was not in a single newspaper report. He had vanished from the story, giving it all to me. He had kept his promise. He had kept me in the light. That night, I went to the Blue Lark Room, not for a shift, but as a guest. The club was full, humming with energy. I sat at a small table in the back. Just before midnight, the band leader stepped up to the microphone. This next one is by request, from the man at the bar, for the woman at table 12. It's an old favorite. The first haunting notes of Harbor in a Storm filled the room. I looked at the bar. Carlo was there, in the shadows, just as he had been that first night. He was watching me. He walked over, his eyes never leaving mine. He did not ask. He just held out his hand. I took it. He led me onto the small, empty patch of floor by the stage. We did not do a showy, elaborate dance. It was not for the crowd. It was for us. He put his hand on the small of my back, a simple, solid pressure. I rested my hand on his shoulder. We stood close, our foreheads almost touching, and we moved in a slow, simple circle. This was not the desperate, adrenaline-fueled kiss in his penthouse. This was not the frantic partnership in a dark warehouse. This was something quiet and slow and real. It was a promise to go at this pace. Steady, sure. His hand was warm on my back. I could feel the strength in his shoulder under my palm. I felt, for the first time in my entire life, completely and utterly safe. Not shielded, but partnered. When I got home, there was an envelope under my door. Official letterhead from the Seastone Arts Center. Dear Miss Vale, in recognition of his clear and prodigious talent, we are pleased to offer Micah Vale a full 2-year scholarship for the Young Percussionist Program, funded by the Northbridge Community Music Fund. I smiled. The Community Music Fund. I had no doubt who the primary donor was. He hadn't just given my son a gift. He had given 20 other children one, too, all to keep his own anonymous. The next day, I found him at the penthouse, and he was on the terrace, overlooking the river. He got the scholarship. I said, "Thank you." "It was an anonymous donation," he said, not turning. Of course it was. I walked up and stood beside him. The air was crisp, clean. "I have a challenge for you, Carlo," I said. He turned, one eyebrow raised. "We are good at this," I said, gesturing at the city, at the quiet luxury around us. "We are good in the dark. We are good in the shadows, in the back rooms, in the late-night meetings." "It is where I have lived my entire life," he said. "I know, but I don't—" I met his gaze. "I'm tired of hiding. I am tired of existing in two worlds. If we are us, if this is real, then I want it to be real in the light." "What are you asking?" "I am asking you to come with me to Micah's school, next week, for the Meet the Parents orientation, not as Carlo Ferrazzi, the owner of the Blue Lark, not as the man in the shadows, just as Carlo, in the middle of the day, in a room full of fluorescent lights and juice boxes and nosy PTA moms." He was quiet for a long time. He looked out at the city, his city, the one he controlled from these heights, from the dark. This was not a thug with a gun. This was not a corrupt official. This was a room full of ordinary people. It was an exposure he had never, ever risked. It was a final test, not of his power, but of his vulnerability. He looked back at me. The scarred smile appeared, small and real. "I will be there," he said. My phone buzzed. Another email. This one was from the Integrity Council. "Miss Vale, in light of your courageous testimony and the subsequent sweeping reforms of the Urban Standards Authority, we would like to formally invite you to join the new Community Advisory Board. It is a volunteer, unpaid position. We believe your voice is essential in building the new infrastructure." I looked at the email, then at Carlo. My fear, the thing that had almost destroyed me, was now being invited to sit at the table, to help write the new rules. I was not just a survivor, I was becoming an architect. The preschool yard at Seastone Arts Center was a sea of bright green grass, bathed in the kind of sharp, clear sunlight that only follows a major storm. The Blue Lark Room's name was on a small, tasteful banner over the lemonade stand. This was the event, the Meet the Parents orientation that I had challenged Carlo to attend. I stood at a small podium, my hands gripping the sides. I looked out at the faces of the parents, the teachers, and the few local reporters who had come. "My name is Kira Vale," I began, my voice clear in the open air. "A few weeks ago, my life was chaos. I learned that when you're in a storm, you cannot control the wind, you cannot stop the rain. All you can do is find your rhythm, a steady beat, to hold on to until the light comes back. For me." I looked over to the side of the small stage where Micah sat, his face serious, behind his little red drum kit. For me, that beat was my son. As I spoke, a movement at the far edge of the schoolyard, by the chain-link fence, caught my eye. Dax Rook. He looked like a ghost. He was unshaven, his eyes wild, his expensive suit rumpled. He was holding up a smartphone, pointing it at the stage, his thumb mashing the screen. He was live streaming. "She's a fake," he yelled, his voice thin and desperate. "She's sleeping with the mob. This is all a Ferrazzi front. He's poisoning your kids. Look at him." He panned his camera to the back of the crowd, where Carlo stood, watching me. I faltered, my stomach turning to ice. The old fear. But before I could even panic, a woman in a beige pantsuit stepped up beside him. It was Noor. She was unrecognizable, blended in, looking like just another suburban mom. She did not touch Rook. She simply tapped the shoulder of the uniformed school security guard she had been politely chatting with for the last 10 minutes. "Officer," she said, her voice carrying, "I'm so sorry, but this man is not on the parent list, and he is filming children without consent. I believe that violates the school's privacy policy. Does it not?" The guard, suddenly all business, moved in. "Sir, you are going to have to stop filming. Sir, I need you to come with me. You are on private school property." "You can't touch me." "This is a public," Rook sputtered, but the two guards were already calmly, professionally, walking him toward the gate. No violence, no shouting, just the quiet, mundane rules of the daylight world, boxing him out. I took a deep breath, turning back to the microphone, but the threat was not over. "This event is finished." Another voice, Director Prentice. flanked by 2 men in Urban Standards Authority uniforms, was marching across the grass. He held a clipboard like a weapon. "We've received a credible security threat," Prentice announced, his voice booming with false authority. "The Urban Standards Authority, in conjunction with Northbridge PD, is shutting this event down for public safety. Everyone must evacuate." He was playing his last card. He couldn't get me, so he was burning the building down. The parents gasped, grabbing their children's hands. Prentice smiled at me, a thin, venomous smile of victory. I did not move. I stepped away from the podium and walked right up to him on the grass. "No, Director Prentice," I said, my voice quiet but carrying. "You are not." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I handed it to him. "What is this?" he scoffed. "That is a civil protection order," I said, "filed by the Integrity Council and signed by a federal judge 1 hour ago. It explicitly prohibits any member, employee, or associate of the Urban Standards Authority, yourself included, from interfering with any community event I am associated with. You are in direct violation of a court order. Sir, stand down, or I will have you removed for harassment." He read the paper. His face, which had been red with bluster, turned a sick, chalky white. He looked at me, at the badge of the security guard, at the reporters who were now filming him. He had no power here. The shadows were gone. He dropped his hand. He turned, and without a single word, he and his men walked off the grass and out of my life. The yard was silent. The crowd was stunned. I looked to the back of the crowd, to the shade of the old oak tree where Carlo stood. I had done my part. Now it was his turn. Carlo. He stepped out of the shadow. He walked through the crowd of parents into the bright, unforgiving midday sun. He wore a simple, dark suit. He looked, for the first time, completely vulnerable. He came and stood next to me. I handed him the microphone. He looked at the crowd, his people, his city. "My name is Carlo Ferrazzi," he said, his voice deep, the microphone carrying it. "I own the Blue Lark Room." He took a long, slow breath. "For a very long time, I have owed a debt to this city, a debt I have paid in the dark. Today, I am choosing to pay it in the light." He looked at the parents. "Starting next month, my community fund will break ground on 3 new public playgrounds in the Cobalt District. We are permanently funding the Seastone scholarships. And my businesses," his voice was firm, a public vow, "are committing to 100 new, union-protected and fully legal jobs by this time next year. That is my promise." He did not apologize for his past. He simply, publicly, committed to his future. He finished, his hand gripping the microphone, his knuckles white. He had never been this exposed. In front of the cameras, in front of the parents, in front of my son, I reached over and I took his free hand in mine. I laced my fingers through his. He looked at me, surprised. I turned to the crowd, holding his hand. "We are doing this together," I said, "and if he steps back toward that line, I will be right here to pull him back to the right side." He squeezed my hand, a silent, powerful answer. I nodded to the stage. Micah, who had been watching us with a profound, 4-year-old seriousness, raised his little red drumsticks high. Tap, tap, tap. 3 sharp, clear, perfect hits on the snare drum. And then, the kids' band, a tiny guitarist and a girl on a keyboard joined him. A bright, upbeat, simple version of Harbor in a Storm flooded the schoolyard, the rhythm, steady and sure. As the music played, my phone, buried in my pocket, vibrated, and again, and again. I pulled it out, still holding Carlo's hand, a cascade of messages. The first, from Maris Quell. "It is done. Rafe Martone pleaded guilty to all counts, full confession. He has implicated Prentice in exchange for a deal." The second, and from Maris Quell, "Ira Bell has been officially disbarred." The third, an official email from the Metropolitan Ethics Commission. The MEC has formally launched a permanent public whistleblower hotline, modeled on your case. "We would like to offer you a 3-month consulting contract to help train our intake staff." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. That evening, the Blue Lark room was dark, closed for a private event. Us. Carlo slid a heavy folder across his polished desk. Thursday nights, he said. They are traditionally slow. I am rebranding the slot. Blue Lark Community Nights. Free admission. All profits are directed to the Seastone Fund. I need someone to run it. I opened the folder. It was not an employment contract. It was articles of partnership, co-ownership of the new venture. 50-50. This is not personal, Kira, he said, his voice firm. This is business. You have a vision for the light. I need it. I took the pen and signed my name. Partners, I said. Later. Much later. We stood on the small, cracked paint porch of my apartment at Harbor Light Courts. The new bright white LED he had installed cast a warm, safe, yellow glow over the steps. The city noise was just a distant hum. He did not try to pull me inside. He stood with me, in my space, on my terms. I turned to him. He waited. I rose on my toes and kissed him. It was not the desperate, frantic kiss of the penthouse. It was not the kiss of adrenaline and relief. It was certain. It was slow. It was the kiss of an arrival. It was a promise that I was here, and I was not running. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me in, his embrace sure and solid. I rested my head on his chest, and his hands came up to tangle in my hair. We stood there, my hands locked around his waist, his buried in my hair, just breathing, my own breathing, which had been fast and shallow for what felt like my entire life. Finally slowed. It matched his. Steady. A small voice came from the open, screened window. Mommy, can you come read me one more story, please? I pulled back, smiling. Carlo, his face softened in the yellow light, smiled too, the real, scarred smile. I'll be right back, I whispered. I opened my door, stepped inside, and paused. I looked out the window, past Carlo, who waited for me on the porch, at the Northbridge skyline. The city was still the city. I knew there would be other storms. There would always be other storms. But I was not afraid. The rhythm was steady, a mother, a child, and a mafia boss, standing, waiting for me, in the light. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more listeners.